Alright, hi, this is Mr. Grack. We're going to be playing my game today. Let's jump into the editor real quick. Really need to get solid state drives. Alright, so the way that I like to look at this code base, I like to have these two code classes up. These are data classes, which show, if you press Control M and then O, it'll zip everything up and you can see how everything is organized. And this just is all of the data that describes things that are global and things that can be instanced. Public static classes can't be instanced, they're only created once. So, for example, this public static class that I've called flags contains all of the flags for the game that will allow me to, for example, boot into the editor or put the game into release mode. Like if I switch this flag over to true, then the game is in release mode and I can press F5 and I'm playing the game in release mode. So it's very easy for me to test releasing. So we'll keep that on false, and then we'll switch this boot routine, which is an enumerator, to being editor level, because what I want to do is I want to test levels, and we'll just boot it. I think right now the total lines of code are like 17,000, so this isn't a big code base right now. I'll talk about the UWP code base when I boot it up. It's actually 75,000 lines of code because I've embedded all the level data. So it's built. And then we have our editor up here. So what's cool about the editor is I can just play the game 100% inside of the editor. Like if I want to turn some cheats on and whatnot, I can. Usually they're all already on. So let's see, some new ideas have already been implemented. It's like there's the ice rod, which creates ice tiles, and you can just create them anywhere you want. And then if you use the fire rod, it'll create fireballs, but it will also melt ice tiles. So it's a fun little level of interaction. This is what's really cool. I have a wand in the game now, and then I have a spell book. So if you equip the wand, it will automatically equip the spellbook over here as the item. So now you can use the wand with X, and you can, I'll turn on input real quick, check this out. There we go, draw input. So if you press Y, it'll bring up all the spells that you can cast. It's like freeze ground. I can just cast that and it will just freeze the ground wherever I am. I can also do this thing called Ice Walk. I cast a spell, and then wherever I go, it will just create ice for a while. Because why not, you know? Here's one where you can just cast bats. And those are all like things that you can interact with too. And then we have like fire. You can create fire. Just ground fires. You can see the fire walk. Oops. Where everywhere you run, it just creates fire. So that's pretty cool. I like that. And then we have like explosions. And you can also do like chain explosions. So let's load up a level real quick. This is the editor that kind of gives me all the different objects, and these are all the different levels that I have for the game right now. We're going to load up the town. So this is the town that I've created, and I'll go ahead and hide the editor, and I'll pull up the debug information. So this gives you how many ticks it takes to do an update and how many ticks it takes to do a draw. Draws are a lot more expensive than the updates. And then this also shows you the 5 main lists, like the indestructible objects, the interactive objects, the projectiles, and the particles, and the floor count. We're not really using a lot of floors right now in this level. But here, let's just kind of explore this. There's a door you can open right here, and you can walk inside, and it'll hide the top of the house the way that you expect it to. You can pick up and throw things the way that you expect you would be able to. But there's additional levels of interaction here, so I guess the best way to show this would be with well, let's do chain explosions. Okay. So that's a chain explosion. It just creates a chain of explosions any way that I'm facing. So let's do bombs actually. Bombs. I create a bomb, it blows up and it burns. So you can blow things up in this game. There's an interesting level of interaction there. So let's go back and use the wand and let's make a chain of explosions. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this house in half with a chain of explosions, and it's all going to collapse. So, oh, and yeah, and the bushes are going to burn too, and then the posts are going to burn. I forgot about that. So now we have posts that have been burned. I'll switch back to the sword real quick. So we can see, like, if I hit this post that isn't burned, I can't destroy it. But these posts that have been burned, you can just cut down. And there's a nice little, there's a tree over here that we've burned. You can walk between them. There's a lot of detail there. And this tree will smoke. Let me show you the hammer. The hammer can just straight up destroy things like that. Destroy walls and whatnot. And objects. Like a bed. So, and the hammer is primarily used for these posts, just like in Link to the Past. You can't knock these posts down unless you have the hammer, so that's fully implemented. Each one of these guys appears a vendor too, so if I talk to this person, I can purchase items from them if I want. And this is a different vendor, like this is a vendor that has dogs, like you can... Now I have... Oh, it didn't spawn my dog. I guess I turned those routines off. So all these different vendors exist. You can buy potions and whatnot. Okay, so let me show burning things with like wind. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reload town. And we're going to turn all that off so it's a little bit easier to see. So one of the fun things is there's wind in the game. Let's create this wand and then I'll just show you what a gust of wind is. It looks like that. And it can push things. Like if I wanted to push like those blocks or that block up there, I can push it. I can push torches like that. I mean, I can just push them like on their own like that, but I can also use wind. So what happens if we do like a global spell? Like, oh my. So here we have wind just flying all around the level. And you'll see that the frame times are still around like 3 milliseconds. And the updates have gone up quite a bit. Like they're a lot higher than the draw loop. Let's see how crazy we can make that. Because what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put Bombos on top of that. And Bombos creates explosions across the entire screen. So this is like a max systems test. So we hit about 7 milliseconds there. We destroyed the entire town with our magic, and the wind is still flying like that. Let's do it again. You can see that the wind is carrying these fire objects away. We're still at, around 7 to 8 milliseconds, and we're still at 153 megabytes. Okay, that's really annoying, so it's really super annoying. So let's turn that off. Stop that. Okay, so this is just to show that these systems are very efficient, and there's a lot that can happen right there. And let me just show swimming real quick, and then I'll stop because this video is getting a little long. But we're on land right now. All right, we can just transition into a walking state, just like in Link to the Past. But then we can just step into the water. If you press X, you can go underwater. Press X again to come out of the water. There's blocking objects, and there's very small collision rectangles that are being used here. So if I do F1, this will turn on the collision rectangles, and we can see what's actually blocking the hero and whatnot. So he has a red rectangle, and that red rectangle is not allowed to overlap with other red rectangles, basically. So I can't do that, but I can do things like this. So I'll turn hitbox drawing off. So you kind of see a peek behind how things are working. I'm just using rectangles to prevent these kinds of overlap, right? But that allows me to make them really small. Like, this is not based on tiles necessarily. This is a fun one. So here's a wave, and it will just slowly affect the magnitude of the hero and push him back out to sea. So like if you're standing there, it will just slowly push you all the way back out. Like, I'm not putting any input in. That's fun. These are vines that like push the hero, but if you go underwater, you can swim underneath them. So I like that. That's a cool idea. I can like block off entrances to areas, and then people have to understand the swimming mechanic before they can enter it. So it's more about understanding how the game works than it is about figuring puzzles out. And this is a fun one too. So these are walls that I've created that you can just climb up. Like, this was not in Link to the Past. But you can just climb up the ladder. There's no stamina bar or anything. You can just stay there on the walls for as long as you want. And you can also climb on these little handholds over here, which make it a little bit harder to go up certain paths. So, and then once you get to the top, you fall as expected. But this is completely faked because this is just flat objects. I'm not actually doing anything with depth here. I've just set up a system that fakes what a mountain wall is, and if you go from the top, you'll fall and hit the bottom. So it's pretty consistent. Got the bumpers that work. Got the switches that you can move around and whatnot. So it's a pretty complete game. I'm just now designing the dungeons and like how levels look and stuff. So here, I'll load that up, and then I'll stop. So let's look at Skull Entrance Coliseum. So what's cool about this level, just turn all this off, is that I'm using a really big sprite here to try and describe like this big building, the Coliseum, and I'm using invisible objects to kind of describe the hitbox of this sprite in the background, so that you can't overlap with it. So if I run up to it, I can't run through it or anything, and that makes it look like it makes it feel like it's real in the game, And I'm trying to do all this like unique pixel art with like skulls and stuff, because this is part of the Shadow Coliseum, and I want the visual theme to continue down into these individual objects. Like, we have skulls on top of these pillars and stuff. I'd like to have pillars with skulls on top of them that are much bigger. So it kind of shows like a new scale to these 2D games. And, of course, if we want to burn this whole level down and destroy it, let's do that. Let's do that right now, actually. There you go. Just blow the whole level up. Blow the whole level up. That's fine. And that'll run at 60 frames per second. So, and even in a level like this, let's test Wind again. So we'll do a furious wind. Oh, I need to change that direction real quick. I want it to be going that way. Okay. So then let's look at Bombos again. So we still have that level of interaction that I was talking about. So we still have that level of interaction that I was talking about with the explosions creating ground fires and the wind pushing those ground fires, and each one of those ground fires creating particles, and it's doing so very efficiently just using pools, just using objects. I think that it's a really good design. You know, it's a very powerful design that lets me do basically anything I want. I mean, I haven't even shown the digging mechanic here. Like, you can just dig and... Oh yeah, if there's water next to a bush, it'll regrow. So those bushes will regrow eventually too. And those bushes will regrow, they'll pop, pop, pop. So there's like a farming mechanic already in the game that exists. And there's a digging mechanic in there too. So there's a little, like some touches from Stardew Valley in there, because you can turn around and, like with a sword, you can sit here and you can just farm, like quite literally farm these bushes for items if you want. So it's there's a lot of really cool ideas in the way that the systems interact. I'm moving into the next phase where I'm kind of designing the world now, and that's going to be really fun because everything is set up to work really well, and creatively I'm not really limited by this design, which is what I think is a really important part of it. Like that's what makes it so powerful. I'll just go ahead and close this and start talking about the design. Actually, I've put all of the functions for the game and for the world into these function classes over here. So like if we look at functions underscore actor, and then we press Control M, Control O, and zip it up, those are all of the methods that describe what an actor does. And not just any actor. Like here, I'll boot the game up again and show you that I can just switch between actors independent. Like this doesn't have to be the hero character. Like for example, if I press F6, now I'm a little blob. I can still do everything, and I have different sound effects. But I'm a blob character. And if I press F6 again, now I'm that angry thing floating around in the sky that is in one of the dungeons. And it has a fang attached as a weapon, so I can actually test exactly how the AI would test it. And it's floating, so the way that it moves is a little bit different. Like its friction has been modified, and the magnitude, like the values that are applied when you move, are a little bit different too. So I can press F6 again, become the next enemy set, which is a bat. It uses the fang. I still have all of my normal UI available. Like I can be a bat that shoots arrows. Why not? You know, I can still burn the level down. So we're still there. So now I'm a mini boss. And I'm a mini boss that can shoot arrows. Like I'm a mini boss that can do whatever they want, and I'm still floating around too. So F6 again. This is really fun. This takes me. I'm a armored. I'm an armored spider. So this is one of the funnest things that I like to do. I like to become this spider guy because he moves really fast, right? And he can attack, and then I will open up the town. Right, press F5, and this is what's great. I am. Oh, oops. Let me just jump through. So I'm going to be a spider again. Okay, cool. I'm a spider that's terrorizing the town. I'm going to open it up and go inside of houses and stuff. I mean, there's like some weird overlaps that are happening that I need to fix, but I can terrorize the people over here as a spider. Oof, that hurt. But yeah, I can just become like this guy who is supposed to be in water. He shoots. Well, he can go into water and then he shoots fire. So there's a lot of there's a lot of system interaction here. And then I can be the big floaty guy. Oh, this guy moves really fast. I forgot because there's like no friction whatsoever. So there's a bat. And these are bosses that are in the dungeon. And then finally there's a Kraken boss, which you would normally fight in water. But I can just become all those bosses or actors and test them. And test like their underwater states. So I don't have to rely on the AI to test them. I can just open them up and be like, okay, is the animation being performed properly by this actor? And then I'm back to just being the normal expected Link character. So there's a lot of flexibility there. And functions underscore actor takes care of all of that. It takes care of all of those actors I just described. It sets their animation states. It determines what animation frames they use. So animation frames is this class. If I press Control MO again, zip it up, you can see that what I'm doing is I'm making a class called animation frames, and then inside of here I've created a byte 4, which is like a XY value, and then a value that's 0, 1 to tell me if I need to flip it horizontally or not. And then just another flag that I can use to describe whatever other properties of this animation that I want. I don't use it necessarily right now. I'm just using these 3 values. So this could be a byte 3 and it would work fine. But what we do here is we define like dungeon objects. Like if I want to talk about like that skull pillar that I picked up earlier, that's where it sits inside the sprite frame at whatever size it is. And then if I look at functions underscore interactive objects, we can go look at a very scary method, and this method is the set type method, which is, if you look over here, it's over 2,000 lines. So I know a lot of people will be like, oh, you have methods over 2,000 lines. It's like, yeah, but it does some very straightforward things. Like all it does is it accepts this type and it applies the type to this interactive object. And there's a lot of things that happen here. All it does is really set the values for this object. So if I want to go to like a common dungeon object and look at like the let me find it real quick. There's a dungeon statue. This is good enough. I'll show you this one. I was looking for the dungeon pillar, but we'll find it later on. I could probably just Control F it actually. No, okay, it's not here. It's probably in like the indestructible objects actually, or I named it something else. But like for the dungeon statue right here, we set the texture. We set its collision wreck height, its offset, which will offset it from the center. If you want to move that collision wreck up or down or left or right or whatever. We flip a boolean that allows it to be saved in the XML data, because there's some things I don't want to save. Like if there's a bunch of debris on the ground, I don't necessarily want to be able to save that. I just want to be able to save specific objects. We changed the move boolean on the move component so that the hero can push it, drag it around, or wind can affect it. We set its current animation based on those animation frames I was talking about again to the dungeon statue. And then finally we set up the sound effects for it. What happens when we hit it? This is a sound effect that plays when we hit it. And then what happens if we kill it? This is a sound effect that plays when we kill it. So in that many lines of code, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, we've described an object and all of its properties. Its texture, its hitbox, whether it can be saved, whether it's movable, what animation it has, its sound effects. So then if we boot this back up and I show you a dungeon statue, we'll just pull up the editor and then step through what these objects are. So here's that dungeon statue. So put some out there so we can just kind of test it. We can walk up to this, we can push it because it's movable. If we hit it, it's hollow, right? And if we use a bomb to blow it up, it creates that shatter sound. So it's working as expected. And if we hit F1 and we look at the hitbox, we can see it's a little offset. It's set up in a way that we can't walk into the object visually, but we can walk behind the object. That. So now I'm going to go find that dungeon pillar because it's sticking in my mind now. So let's jump over here into dungeon objects, indestructible. Okay, so it is an indestructible type. It's a skull pillar. So here's a way to abuse Visual Studio for fun and profit. Now that I have enumerators set up over here, if I comment this out and then press Ctrl-Shift-B, it's going to build my project. That enumerator no longer exists, and it will show me where it's used inside of the entire project. So for example, if I jump over here, so functions_indestructible object, this is what describes the skull pillar. There's its texture. There's the where it actually sets the size of it, the height of it, and that's the draw rec. So that's what it's actually drawing from the sprite. So it's not a 16 by 16 pixel object, it's a 16 by 16 times 2 pixel object. Then we add an offset to it to give it some height so that it sorts above the hero properly, and then we offset the hitbox for the skull pillar so that the hero can properly collide with it, and then we set the animation. And we're using the animation frames, which already have the animation frames. That byte 4 value over here is already statically allocated. It's just 7.3. That's created upon boot. That new value, that new keyword I'm using right there, that allocates, it does so upon boot. So over here, I can switch any indestructible object to become a skull pillar. And it will target the proper sheet, it will update its values, and it will switch its current animation without creating anything new. And then we can also see that there's two places that skull pillar is used. It's defined here, and then inside of our widget where we set up the interactive objects or the indestructible objects. It's defined right there. We're just setting a type on a list. So if I uncomment that and then build it again, it'll build fine. And then I'll show you inside of the editor where that skull pillar object is. So skull pillar is going to be right there. So we have these different objects that we can grab. Like there's boat objects that you can select over here that are big, small, whatever. There's objects that are sized any way that you want them to be. Specifically, I'm talking about the skull pillar though, this indestructible object. So let's put some of those out there, and let's talk about what this is. So if we hit F1, there's the hitbox. So we see that, we can't overlap red squares basically. And then here's how we can walk behind them. And we can't overlap them. So it's a solid system. There's not much I can really do. Like I can't push them or anything. If I pull up some wind, the wind is not going to move them. So I can safely stand on the other side of them, but if I don't, then wind will eventually push me. So let's stop that. So we see that it's interacting with these objects properly. That's basically an overview of the game. I know that I'm just ranting now at this point, but I thought it'd be fun to show people like just how useful this design is. So I'm just going to close the DirectX project now, and then I'm going to open up the UWP project. The UWP project is linked against the level data, and the level data is written by code. So I create levels in the editor, and then I press a button, and the program converts that level data into C# code that I can embed in the system then. So let's flip this Boolean true so that we're in release mode for the UWP version. And the UWP version is built against all of the level data. So now let's just look at how many lines of code this is. So it's got to build the project real quick, and then we can look at the LOC. I know it's going to be like around 75,000 lines, probably more. So, okay, we're at 74,000 lines. You can see how most of this breaks down if you just start taking this apart. Most of it sits inside of like room data, level data classes. And those describe what those levels look like. So in release mode, with the level data embedded, this is what happens when I press F5. Look, we haven't changed the boot routine to game or anything. We just put it into release mode using the true Boolean, and we'll get the game back in a release format, basically, once Visual Studio decides to deploy it. There we go. And UWP is painfully slow. Look, we even have a debugger running. Alright. So let me turn that music down a little bit. Yes, I composed that music. So let's just do a new game. So now we're on the overworld. So we can just jump into any red level like this, and like I was showing you. And everything still works the way that we expect it to. There's our boomerang. We don't have to necessarily catch the boomerang. But like, for example, here's a field. Let's burn the field down. We'll just turn some cheats on real quick. Okay, so what I want to do is, I like using the wand because I'm a Harry Potter fan. So here's some fire. We're just going to create fire like that. So let's set the field on fire like this. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to set this grass on fire, and the fire is going to spread across all this grass. There's an explosive barrel right here that the fire will trigger, and it will also burn down this tree right here. It will also burn all these posts and this bush. So let's do that. Oh, it didn't catch the tree. Oh, there it goes. I guess you gotta be persistent with it. Anyway, so that's working. So if I exit this level, which, you know, it isn't fully designed, but let's jump over to here. Let's just do a fight in the Coliseum real quick. So here I am at the Coliseum. I'm just going to run up to this big shadow. Yeah, let's go inside. So here's a Coliseum, the interior of it. It's just a big square to fight in, basically, with some people talking. So let's talk to this guy. This is a challenge vendor, and there's different enemies we can fight. Like, I want to make some better enemies. We'll fight Big Eye right now. So here we go. So this guy has a fun strategy. He creates these little guys that will explode, chase after you and explode. If you get far away enough from them, they'll stop blinking and they'll stop chasing you, though, because they can't see you. There's a radius that they have that's active. So if you see I activated that one, and this works for large scale. Oops. There we go. Get that loot. So. Ooh. Stacked up some explosions on them. Okay. So there's things that can happen with the system that are pretty complicated, but it's all very stable. So let's do some OP stuff right now. Let's just blow everything up. Why not? Let's just blow everything up. Let's use this other magic too, like Ether Magic. This creates so Ether Magic creates lightning that comes down onto actors and kills them immediately. So, like for example, let's fight the big bat. So what the big bat does is he creates these little bats all around him. And see, I liked this idea so much that I was like, let's just make that a spell. So it's a spell now. You can spawn bats just like the bat boss does. Alright. So let's see what happens if we do some Furious Wind. So that's gonna push the bat and all of his little bat friends. That's great. Yeah, I'm having a hard time fighting this guy like this. But here, let's change the wind direction. So now it's pushing down. You see every little bat that he creates gets interacted with and pushed quite hard actually. So let's add another layer of craziness to this and throw Bombos on top of it. Okay, so this is getting kind of crazy. Stop this wind. Okay, so he's chasing me now. So he's in phase 2 of his fight. Of his AI, really. So he's chasing me and he wants to bite me. Okay, you can bite me. No? You don't want to bite me? Oh, okay. So let's just fight him. Because what's cool is his third phase, he just goes towards the middle and he does this. This is what's really fun. So any of these objects can hit me. So I've got to kind of like, as I fight him, like I think one of the best strategies for fighting him this way is to like grab the arrows, right? And to kind of attack from a distance, but you have to dodge all these bats that he's creating. So let's test this. I want to go and I want to test systems of like the wind. Like I want Furious Wind. I'll change the wind direction. To be that way. So I want to push him. I want to push him more up that way. So against the back wall. Because I want to see what crazy things can happen here. So let's look at frame times real quick. So let me go to options menu. I just want to look at the debug info. So we're still at about 1 millisecond up here. 199 megs. Our update loop is like around 9,000 to 11,000 ticks. So here, let me stop this because it's just craziness. Alright, so once we stop it, we see that we still have all these projectiles being created, and that update loop is still kind of big. Even though we're at 1 or 2 milliseconds a frame, it's really not a big deal. So let's get rid of this guy. I'm done fighting him. So either is probably the easiest way to kill him, because it just spawns a lightning bolt out of nowhere directly onto the enemy and kills him. Okay, so there's more challenges and there's more stuff to do here, but I'm gonna stop because man, this is becoming like a long video. So we'll just go ahead and let's quit the game properly. Just go down to quit. Yes, I want to quit. So here we go, back at the main menu, and then we can